All right. Hello, all. Thank you for joining us. We will, as you've heard, be recording this, and we will update the websites later this week. We'll add this recording for folks who may have missed it. We'll make sure you can get back to it as well. There is a lot of information on the program websites for Health Informatics and Analytics and for Data Science and Business Analytics. If you have not visited those sites, I've posted the links. I will repost them again throughout the conversation. It is the starting point for many of your questions and the ending point for many of your questions. So please take advantage of it. So today, what we want to do in the next hour is to go over the broad requirements for the internship, what you need to do, what the expectations are, what kinds of elements, types of projects are appropriate for both health informatics and for data science for those specific internship projects. We'll talk about the proposal. We'll talk about where to find internships. What are the resources? There's a lot out there for you, but we all know it's kind of a challenging environment, and we want to try to make sure that you are aware of all the tools that are in your toolkit. Towards the end, we'll be talking about some of the other alternative capstone options, the thesis option in the DSBA, the healthcare problem solving in the HIA program. There's a couple other elements. And so at that point, Dr. Guh and Dr. Hastakatic will be coming into the conversation to talk about those. Any kickoff questions, anything for the group before we start? Okay. Again, you can throw those in the chat, and we will answer them either in the conversation or at the end. With that, Professor Fox, you
Very
have.
good. Thank you for the introduction. And as Josh alluded to, there's plenty for us to get through on today's agenda. And this is a very important topic because obviously you can't get your DSBA degree without a capstone option. And the internship traditionally has been the most popular option for our students. Also covered here today is HCIP 6400. Which is very similar in terms of an internship. There are some slight differences that we'll highlight. And luckily, we've got Dr. Geh here to help us with some of those specifics as well. So let's talk about requirements first of all, and then go on from there. I'm going to take little breaks and try to answer questions appropriately at each of these agenda points. So feel free to put those questions in the chat. And as I mentioned, Dr. Hertel will probably help me field some of those questions at stopping points. But let's talk about the requirements in order to enroll in 6400 first. All right. So in order to get into DSBA 6400, and I guess this is worth mentioning here right in the middle of the slide, which is the reason why we have this course is to be very much a practicum. It's an opportunity for you to apply all of the skills that you've picked up over the course of your degree. And so we want our students to be successful in the real world, use data science out in businesses and organizations that need that data science expertise. And so it really is an opportunity. And we'll talk about some of those potential side effects and benefits of the internship as well. Of course, the experience itself is great, but it's also something that is an amazing resume builder. And finding an internship can be hard, but once you've gotten into an internship and you've put that on your resume, I promise you that potential employers are going to look at that on your resume and ask about it. Like, wow, what did you do during this internship, right? So think of it not only as a requirement, but I think also as an opportunity, I think is how I would frame that. So because this is something that we want you to get into after you have some core competencies built up, there is a minimum hours requirement. So if you're in the DSBA program, we're expecting you to have at least 18 credit hours of graduate coursework under your belt before you get into an internship. For HIA, the requirement is a little bit less stringent, but again, the idea is to have some of those basic core classes kind of knocked out so that you feel prepared to apply those data science skills during your internship. Okay, so other than being ready from a credit hour standpoint, the big thing is to find an internship, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But it's important to really plan and make this part of your strategy for your DSBA degree. So it's good that you're online and paying attention right now and asking questions because this is not something that you can think about during the last semester of your master's degree, right? You really need to start thinking about, this internship as something that you're going to work towards, start networking, start making connections, etc. And as Dr. Hertel has noted in the past, that's sometimes beneficial to you because that act of going out and finding an internship is very much like the act of going out and finding a new job. So you're going to be exercising the same muscles in terms of your ability to find an internship. But this is what I want to highlight here, which is that the UNC Charlotte will not assign you an internship, right? We are not giving you an internship. It is your responsibility to find that internship opportunity. And like I've said before, students can struggle sometimes. So we will talk about that and give you some ideas of what you need to do to find that internship opportunity. Okay. So once you've made a connection at a company, you're going to have one person who's your key connection at that company, who will be your mentor slash preceptor. So, especially in the HIA field, we refer to that person as a preceptor, and there's certain requirements and things that are slightly different. But all in all, they're kind of the same, right? Mentor, preceptor. In short, this is the person who is inside a business or inside an organization who is helping you go from, basically execute your internship and kind of guide you along the way, give you access to things like data and systems so that you can perform your internship. And sometimes it's more than one person, right? It doesn't need to be, you only have one connection at that company. But for the purposes of DSBA and HCIP 6400, we want one person's name as that primary contact. And sometimes it's a business person, right? So you could have someone who's a mentor at your company who knows almost nothing about data science, right? Or you could have a mentor at a business or an organization who they already have a large background in data science and they kind of know exactly what you need to do. So that also plays into this a little bit as well, right? Depending on the size of the company, some companies have very well structured internship opportunities. Some of you may have heard of the Wells Fargo externship, right? Where it's a little bit more structured, and we can talk about that. But a lot of these are a little bit more informal, especially with smaller companies. Timing can kind of be all over the place. So we're going to talk about all of those things. But finding a mentor who is able to pull you into the organization and really get you set up is really important, right? So it's not enough to just say, oh, yeah, I know somebody at this company, but that person has to have the ability to onboard you into a meaningful internship, right? And usually that means giving you access to data because guess what? It's a data science, capstone. So we want you to show off those skills that you've obtained. All right, so that's it. Once you've found an organization and an appropriate mentor and preceptor, you are going to come up with a project proposal. And this is something that you usually do in collaboration with your mentor slash preceptor. So you would sit down, talk about it. Usually if you're lucky, they have some ideas of what they want you to work on for the internship. Sometimes it requires a little bit of your creativity. If this is if a person who is not as familiar with data science, as I alluded to before. So it's a discussion, right? And that initial proposal will have some questions that we'll ask you. And the way that we collect those proposals is via a Google form. And as Dr. Hertel has mentioned many times, that Google form is pasted everywhere. You're going to see it in the SDS newsletter. You're going to see it on our website, right? So be aware that this is not an email to me, even though I'm generally the facilitator for 6400. we have some structure around this, right? So you're going to submit your proposal. It includes things like a summary of your proposal, what the overview of the work is, who your mentor is, what your mentor's contact information is, right? So we're collecting some basic information. Um, and then I go in and I review these proposals, and we want to have these proposals completed well in advance of the semester that you're trying to enroll in. So it's really important. We've had a couple students who are like, right up to drop ad, they're like, oh, let me put in a proposal. And generally that is not the way to go, right? So you want to give us a buffer, and we have some recommended timeframes that we'll talk about. Um, Definitely 2 to 3 weeks in advance of the semester is preferred. Even earlier is absolutely fine. And we will talk a little bit more about timing as well. But getting your proposal in on a timely basis is really critical. And that speaks to this ability of you to kind of tee up this opportunity, and get that, so that you can get this credit in the semester that you want to get this credit. All right, so that's where I'll leave that as far as timing goes. For HCIP, I would say there's an additional set of vetting sometimes that we need to do. So for the HIA program in particular, if we have, and this is actually true for DSBA as well. So let me just back that up for a minute. There are special requirements if you are dealing with healthcare data, right? So if you're going into an internship and you're working at Atrium Health or some other company that has, HIPAA data or healthcare data involved, the School of Data Science will pay for some insurance that will help you through your internship, and those agreements kind of need to be in place with those organizations in advance. And because of all of those additional steps of processing, sometimes UNC Charlotte already has an agreement in place with an organization, and that's an easy process. Sometimes, if you're in the HIA space and it's a new, healthcare company or something that we don't have any experience dealing with them, we're going to need that initial buffer time before you can successfully enroll and get into your internship, so that we can make those arrangements with that particular internship company. And I think Dr. Ge can really maybe expand on that if we have additional questions there. Okay, so your internship, and we'll talk about like what an internship looks like and what the content of an internship is. But I tell people there's really three really critical components, and we'll talk about those. But one of them is that your internship has to be 160 hours of work. And how that work is distributed across the semester is not as important. But keep in mind, if you have a really heavy course load, 160 hours is not nothing, right? This could be hard for you to take on a full load of courses and do an internship at the same time and hold down a full-time job, right? I know a lot of us are graduate students and already working a full-time position as well. So be aware of that sort of effort that we're expecting to see in the internship. It's a lot of work. Internships can be a lot of work, but that's time that you need to dedicate in that particular semester where you're going to tackle that internship. So I think might be a good time to pause and talk about, do we have any questions about requirements at this point? What do you guys think? And Dr. Hertel, if you don't mind helping me out.
Sure. So we got a question in the chat. If we can't find an internship and complete all the course requirements, do we need to keep taking other classes to stay in the program? Yes and no. Depending on, for students who are on a student visa, you are required to stay in compliance in terms of being a full-time enrolled student. There may be some other options. That is not the situation we want students to be in, where they're simply paying to hold the space till they can get the internship. So hopefully, well before that, we've identified other pathways. If you are a traditional student, if you're a student, you can always take a semester off if need be. But again, this is, I think, the point that Professor Fox was making, that's a really important one. If you're starting early, if you are getting engaged in the different event, and we'll talk about some of the resources, you should be getting some opportunities for internships, paid, unpaid, on campus, off campus. Um, there may be some research opportunities as well, and there are some other potential capstones, but we can talk more about that. Is there another question coming in? Is there in-person versus remote requirement? No, you can be here, you can be in person, you can be remote. That's fine.
All right.
Okay. So,
All
and
right.
Sydney, so again, we've chatted directly about this. There are, if you're having trouble, if you're at that point where you've been searching and you're hitting a brick wall, you should be talking probably to me directly, setting up time to kind of talk through what your strategy's been, where you've had success. That's what we're here for. So just reach out if you are coming up into that last semester and you're starting to get panicked after this, set up time, we'll talk.
All right. Okay. I'm going to keep rolling in the interest of time, and we will take some questions at the end as well. All right. So, what do internships look like? What kind of companies are we talking about? This is where the net is really wide, right? You can go in a lot of different directions. And the types of companies that you can engage in is actually one of the advantages of, I think, of being a data science, master's student, which is data science is applicable to almost any industry, right? So you could work for banks, manufacturers, healthcare companies, retail companies, consulting companies. It really is. It's wide open, and these companies need interns, right? So, in some cases, we have ongoing, relationships with these companies. Like I said, UNC Charlotte is not going to place you as an intern, but we have companies that come back again and again, right? Because they love our students. So, like the Hartford is a great example, right? They tend to engage with us and do some really cool projects. One of the things that the Hartford Insurance Group has done is done some deep learning models to analyze satellites to see if people have roof damage or tree cover over their roofs and stuff. And you might be wondering, like, why does that matter? Well, from an insurance standpoint, it does matter, right? So these are all over the map, and the projects can be really interesting. My suggestion to you is to try to find an internship that is going to make you excited, right? If you are excited about the thing that you're working on, that's the ideal scenario, right? So, I don't know, Josh, would you add anything to this in terms of this discussion?
Was just gonna put a type in there. The Hartford's actually gonna be on campus in 2 or 3 weeks, doing a training on GitHub
Nice.
for students. So again, there's a lot of ways to connect, and we can talk more about that. But
Okay,
um,
cool. All right, very good. So health informatics, again, you are obviously wanting to get an internship that is healthcare related or health data related. Dr. Good, do you want to pipe in or talk about things that you look for or things that students might want to think about as they're looking at health informatics internships?
Health, well, health informatics, we are kind of we have two types of internships, I guess. So the what's because we have two concentrations. One is the services outcomes, and the other is data science. So the data science students have a little bit broader opportunities, similar to other data science students in DSBA. Health services outcomes, because they're coming from clinical backgrounds, they tend to look or obtain sort of internship opportunities more from the healthcare side. And so the what's listed here, evaluating current processes and developing systems to capture data and all that are all reasonable projects to work on. Anything that's related to health, basically. Um, that's what I want to add.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And so there are slight differences between DSBA and the HCIP 6400. When I talk about internships for the DSBA program, again, we talked about that proposal process, and we do have a slide. We'll walk you through that. But it's really important for DSBA students to really have some in-depth data science work in their proposal. So when I look at those proposals, I'm going to want to see data science skills that you've learned in our program being applied. So an example of an internship that may not get approved would be something where a student, writes a proposal to say, I'm going to build, a Tableau dashboard for someone, which is great. It's something that sometimes companies need, but it doesn't have enough data science work, right? Just building a Tableau dashboard is not enough. Or just doing some basic SQL data engineering, while probably necessary in your internship. And honestly, all internships are going to have some grunt work, right? They're going to have data cleaning. They're going to have, stuff that is not data science as part of, the effort involved there. But what I'm really looking for in those proposals is that you have some really good data science work, right? So when you think about what your internship should be, think about having those data science skills. The reason I mention it here in a juxtaposition with the HCIP 6400 is that we are a little bit more lenient in terms of the depth of the data science work, because in health informatics, the domain knowledge and the practice in the domain is really key and critical to those internships. And so the requirements are slightly different. An HCIP 6400 proposal, I might approve that one, where if it was a DSBA program, I would say, you know what, you need more data science work here because you're a DSBA person. So I'll leave it there. Okay, next slide. All right, so here's some examples of DSBA internships. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, so you shouldn't think of it that way. We're just trying to give you ideas of things and components, especially that have that data science component that I was mentioning before. If you're building a predictive model to predict something, that's absolutely great, right? So there's a lot of opportunities within organizations to take advantage of machine learning and predictive modeling. A customer churn model is a good example, customer attrition. Which customers are going to leave? Can we save those customers? Can we make something more productive? Can we improve patient outcomes? Can we predict who's going to be readmitted to a hospital? Can we, all these types of questions and more can be answered sometimes or estimated, right, with predictive models. And so that's a key component of a data science in general, right, is modeling and machine learning and predictive modeling. So that's a good sign. If you have some of that activity within your internship, that's one of those green flags I'm looking for, as I mentioned before, in your proposal. You could look at, maybe a company has a new opportunity that they want to look at. Maybe they have some third-party data. A lot of internships, they're going to ask their interns to, scrape the web or find new data or look at a new vendor source of data to try to augment something, right? Data science can be a little bit like research and development, if you want to think of it this way, right? Not all data science projects are going to be successful. And I think that's a good time for me to actually talk about that as well, which is, what if I start an internship, we try to build a predictive model, but then the predictive model turns out to not be very predictive and not be very useful? Did I just fail my internship? And the answer is no, right? The answer is, if I can see at the end of the semester, and we'll talk about what those deliverables are, but if I look at your final deliverables and I say, you know what, you did solid, good data science work and, just didn't work out, that's absolutely fine. That's a meaningful data science experience. One of the things I sometimes say is that an expert is someone who has seen all the problems, right? And so, as someone who's been in industry, I've seen a lot of things go wrong, and it enhances your knowledge, right? So, don't feel like the thing that you're doing has to be put into production or like a big success in order for you to pass 6400. But you do need to demonstrate that you're doing some meaningful data science work. That's really one of those key components. The other aspect of this, so when I talk to students about 6400, I often say that there's like two pillars to success, right? One of them is making sure that you're doing meaningful data science work. The other pillar of success here is a little bit more nuanced, which is you have to be able to demonstrate how your data science work is benefiting that business or organization. So it could be, you might have to understand and learn a little bit about that business, right? So if this is a manufacturing company and they're manufacturing some sort of a widget, and you're doing a data science project to help that manufacturing process, you need to be able to actually communicate to me how that data science work that you're doing could could potentially impact or benefit that organization, right? And you need to almost have like the napkin math and say, you know what, we think this saved X amount of dollars or made us X amount more productive or saved X percentage of, hospital days, whatever it is, right? You need to map that data science work to an actual tangible business or organizational benefit, right? So if you can do those two things, do data science work, show the benefit to the company, then you're going to succeed in the internship program, even if your project is not put into production or is not especially successful, right? So we'll definitely pause here, I think, one more time. Are there any questions about things that would maybe qualify or not qualify as like an internship opportunity? What do you guys think? Okay, while I'm waiting for maybe a question or two to trickle in, let me talk about one more thing, which is I know many of our graduate students have full-time jobs, right? They're taking evening classes, they're currently holding down a job, and your company might not actually want you to go out and do an internship at another company, right? So one of the questions we sometimes get is, can I do an internship within my own company? And the answer is absolutely yes, right? And how you approach that could be different depending on your particular situation. So, if you are, for instance, maybe you're in the finance department right now, but your organization has a data science team, ideally you would go to that data science manager, obviously talk to your manager too, and say, hey, I have an interest in doing an internship with you. And sometimes that will mean that you're taking on additional work, right? You'll like, you might have to put in your normal 40 for this company, but you might have to also go above and beyond to add those 160 hours to your work week. So it can be a lot, right? But it's a nice way for you to have an internship within your company. Sometimes, depending on your company, they're very much willing to support you with, every company likes extra work, right? So if you're willing to do extra work, a company will take that. And so it could be an opportunity for you to build a relationship with that data science manager and say, you know what, the next time a full-time position opens, I'm going to try to move into a team that feels like more what I want to do long term, right? So in that sense, the internship can be an opportunity for you to kind of mobilize within your company. Obviously, you need to talk to all the people and make that work. But it's something that some of our students do regularly, which is, take on an internship. Again, ideally with a different manager. If it is your existing manager, that's okay. But you really still need to do data science work, right? So the requirements don't shift, but that's important to understand as well.
Let me
Um,
take Evan's question, and then I'm going to have you
yep.
take Brittany's question, if you don't mind. So, Evan, if you are working with an organization and you have defined a person who can be a mentor, and they're doing statistical modeling and data analysis, that may be a project that you can appropriate for the internship. And so you want to explore that within the organization. If it's just something you're doing on your own as kind of an interest, as a curiosity, that's going to be tougher to form into an internship proposal. You need a structure around you. You need an organization around you in which you're working in some way, shape, or form. And then Brittany had the question
Yep.
about the value. Quantify.
Yeah, I just read it. So that's a good question. So Brittany's question is, how do we value or quantify the value of a potential data science project, especially if it wasn't fruitful, right? So I've actually had this happen to me in the past where We had we had a prospect database, so thousands of prospects, people that we could potentially reach out to. And I was asked to build a model to try to rank those prospects by the ones that were kind of like the best prospects for us. So, assuming we could only reach out to 50 prospects, our organization wanted to get some rank ordering, right? So who are those 50 people we should reach out to? When I did that data science project, I grabbed all the features of these prospects. I did some modeling, and it turned out we didn't have a lot of predictive data about who a good prospect was, right? So it was not a super successful data science project. But despite that, I could have still done the napkin math and said, you know what? If I can get X percentage better or X percentage more likely to respond, then that would have or should have resulted in an increase of X amount of customers, which would have brought in X amount of dollars, right? So just because you don't have a successful data science component doesn't mean you can't demonstrate that understanding of the value to the business, right? So that's a good way to frame it sometimes, right? Which is sometimes you have a hurdle or a goal, like we want to get 10% better at doing something. And what does that 10% better mean? Or what does that 20% better mean? Or whatever it is, right, in your particular scenario. So that ability to walk that napkin math from the data science potential to the benefit is what I'm looking for there. So hopefully that answers that question.
Chloe's asking about doing the internship through her current job. And Professor Fox can also speak to this as well. But the key thing is it's great to do with your existing organization and to grow within your existing organization to maybe demonstrate the power of data to a unit that hasn't been using it successfully in past. That's all good. The key is do you have somebody who can mentor you and do you have enough data to work with? That's going to be a key part of it. Do you want to add anything to that, Robert?
Yeah, I think that's right. And look at it as an opportunity. You know, you might have to do some networking and some outreach. Obviously, talk to your current manager. You don't want to make everybody upset, but yeah, hopefully your organization is taking care of you as an employee and they want you to grow and become better, right? So I try to make this a positive experience, and 99% of the time it is, right? So we generally our employers love the fact that you're building data science skills, right? They need these skills within their organization. So, all right, very good. All right, so this is the big one. This is the big question. This is where students either procrastinate or panic or get frustrated, right? So, finding the internship, it is your responsibility to find the internship, and that can be tough. So what do you do? How do you do it? Well, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to, poke your head up. You're going to want to attend the seminars that the School of Data Science puts together, right? So if you're able to attend some of these events, you'll find that they love hanging out and talking with students, like connecting with you on LinkedIn, getting the conversation started. So networking is not easy to do. And if you can establish some relationships in person with people, that is by far and away the best way to obtain an internship, right? So just trying to fill out like an internship form on an online website, and it can feel like it kind of goes into a black hole. And sometimes it maybe does, right? Who knows, so knowing the people within the organization is tough. How do you get to know these people? It's basically showing up. It's going to things like career fairs even, right? So normally you would think you would go to a career fair just if you're finding a job, but who says you can't go to a career fair to find an internship, right? So think outside the box a little bit, try to look for those opportunities. Obviously, if you have relationships and people that you can inquire with your friends and professional peers and say, hey, you know what? I'm really looking for something in the data science domain. I know your company does some stuff with data science. Do you guys do internships, right? So figure it out. It is tough. Networking is tough. It takes work. And this is why you need to start early, right? So even as early as possible to get this process flowing so that you can tee something up and have that opportunity ready when you're about to graduate or get your degree. So another thing that we talk about sometimes, and I love this piece of advice too, which is as you go through our program at UNC Charlotte, it's really great for you to build a little portfolio, right? And what I mean by that is something that demonstrates your work to potential employers. So you're always going to give your resume to someone, right? Your resume is there and that represents you. But I've been a hiring manager before, and one of the things I really like to see is, okay, these are the skills and things you've said that you can do, but show me one of the projects that you've done. That's pretty interesting to me. As someone who is a potential hiring manager, it gives me an insight to, oh, you really are passionate about this. You did something kind of cool, or you did a little project here. So how do you build that portfolio? One strategy is to build up a GitHub account. So I don't know if you missed it earlier this presentation, but Dr. Hertel mentioned, we're going to have a little how-to on GitHub. It's a perfect opportunity for you to think about that portfolio building process, right? So maybe you have some notebooks out there. Obviously, you want that portfolio to look clean and professional, right? So you're going to want to put some thought into it and make it presentable. Obviously, if you can do things like publications, et cetera, attend hackathons, even doing things like Kaggle competitions, all of those are great because they show your applied interest in this field. And they're great ways for you to break the ice, talk to the people, have that demonstration that, this is more than, just a degree for you. This is something that you really enjoy doing and want to practice. So I know I appreciated that as a hiring manager. I'm sure I've left out something. Dr. Hertel, did you want to add anything to the finding the internship?
Well, I got to apply to a doctoral program first to be doctor, but that's all good.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Um, well, just again, and there's actually a typo in the slide. It's Tuesday professional seminars. Show up, get engaged in the conversation. We've got a whole slew of events that we do through the school, through the college. CCI has employers in the foyer, all opportunities for you to start conversations to talk about what their companies do and where there might be opportunities and how they do internships. Yesterday's seminar was from Honeywell, and they had a listing of some of the summer internship programs that they're recruiting for right now. A lot of the larger corporations have summer rotational programs, and those are a common way to kind of get engaged. For some of you, you need something specifically in spring, so you're going to have to hustle a little harder. And oftentimes, those projects come through personal knowledge, a conversation with somebody who says, hey, we've got a team that's working on a problem. We could probably use an intern to help supplement that team, and a door opens. But if you don't have the conversations, it's not gonna happen. So please do your best to show up and get engaged in all of the events. The Career Center has got a huge set of events. I sent earlier in the conversation in the text a link to the Career and Technologies Week, which is next week. It's a whole week of panels and discussions with different companies, resume reviews, LinkedIn support, specifically targeted to students working in data science, data analytics, health analytics. You've got a special set of skills that you can bring, and they're there to support you for that week. So check out the schedule and try to plug into some of those events. I'm getting a little concerned about time, so just go back one quick slide.
Yeah.
I think there was, yeah, some of the community groups are great to get involved in. The student newsletter. We get a lot of job postings and a lot of internship postings. Anything that comes directly to us, we funnel into the newsletter. And as many of you know, we purposely put the job postings at the bottom of the newsletter. So if you don't download the full newsletter, you don't see it. But that's how we get you to go all the way through and look at the different events and resources that are available for you. Please take advantage of that. We work hard to try to get that information to you for that. Most of these, this is actually added September 15th. It's next week, so we can just skip past it. But that's the Technology, Data, and Analytics Week of events. It's coming up, is actually next week.
Okay.
So we can
Something to take note of, though, right? There's upcoming opportunities here.
Yep. And then next slide. The internship, again, I've posted in there. There is a lot of information on the internship site. Please take advantage of that. Um, the um, the information there, I think you've covered pretty well,
Yep. I
Box.
think
So
I think we've covered most of this in terms of getting started. Obviously, we're encouraging you to figure this out. And as we think about the timeline, we say here a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the start of the term, but earlier is absolutely fine, right? Those proposals coming in earlier, we love that, right? Because it gives us an opportunity to have a little bit more dialogue and a little bit of a buffer zone. As I mentioned before, if you're in the HCIP program, you're going to want to build in some additional buffer time, right? So you can't register in 6400 until your proposal is approved. So that's the general workflow here, which is you're going to, find your opportunity, which is obviously a big hard part of it. Have that conversation with your mentor. You're going to fill out the proposal, which again is a Google form. I will review typically that Google form within a week or so. Obviously, I do that at a little bit more of a quicker cadence as we get closer to the semester. I will either give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If I give you a thumbs down, it's probably because I did not see enough data science work. That's the number one reason why I will reject a proposal.
which
So,
let me just add in is
yeah,
it's sometimes the best news you can get, because what Professor Fox is telling you, the project that you have in hand is not going to get you across the finish line. Here are some suggestions of how you can beef that project up. And so that's we want to make sure if you're spending your time and your tuition dollars, we've got you in the best position to be successful.
yeah, 100% right, right? Which is this is to protect you from getting into an internship where you don't meet the requirements at the end of the semester, right? We don't want that to happen to anyone. So, this is also kind of a nice little excuse for you to have that conversation with your mentor and said, Professor Fox said, I can create a Tableau dashboard for you, but I also need to do some data science work. Maybe can we build in like a forecasting model or something? So it does give you room to have that negotiation with your organization and insert that data science work if needed, right? So once your proposal is approved, you can get authorization to enroll, and then obviously you enroll for 6,400. So that's the general process at the beginning of the semester. During the internship, in the internship course itself, there are no regular weekly meetings, right? So there are some deliverables for the class. At the very beginning, I will email all of your mentors. And then we have some deliverables, including like I want to see a project plan, when at the start of your internship, and then little progress report updates, which are just really easy one-page, notes of, where you are in your internship. That gives me an opportunity to kind of track you during your internship. The real focus for the 6400 is in your final deliverables. That's 90% of your grade. And for DSBA, this is a pass-fail course. For HCIP, this is a letter grade course, right? So there's a slight difference there as well. But your final report and final presentation are the critical deliverables that you're going to be giving, again, at the end of the semester. A 10-minute presentation where I will ask you questions for 5 minutes. And so it goes fast, right? But then also a long form paper where you show me and demonstrate all the detail and things that you've done during your internship. And we recognize that sometimes companies will have proprietary information that they can't or they don't want shared. We generally don't want that in your final materials, right? We don't necessarily need that. If it needs to be anonymized or abstracted in some way, that's absolutely fine. What I'm looking for is, did you do solid data science work, right? So if you need to obscure the numbers or do whatever, that's a conversation that you and I can have, but we don't need proprietary information from companies, right? That's something that is often a concern as well. But those final reports are really the key, right? And they happen at the end of the semester. So after your internship, I will be emailing your mentors again, just as a feedback point loop at the very end. And then you get a chance to evaluate your experience, right? Some internship opportunities are great and some are not so great, right? I've seen them all. Most of the time, it's fine, right? So that's kind of the punchline here for how this all kind of goes from a beginning to ending standpoint. So we've got two more slides. I'm just going to plow through, and then we'll have hopefully a solid 10 minutes to take some questions here. So one thing to note, and Dr. Good may want to pipe in here, but if you're an HIA student, there is an alternative for you rather than taking HCIP 6400. Did you want to say a few words about this class, or I don't know.
I can say, uh, I just add one thing. I wouldn't call this capstone as an alternative to internship. I would still encourage everyone to seek internship if you are trying to get a job,
Yep,
because to me, internship is actually kind of a precursor to a job,
yep,
potential job seeking. So, however, there are reasons for HIA students to take the capstone instead of an internship, and when we designed that, we had a couple of reasons. One is if you are in the DO program with public health. You already have an internship with the DO program, and therefore it doesn't make any you don't need to do another internship in our program, and so taking a capstone makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, we do have some healthcare related positions that don't care too much about an industry experience, but especially in those hospitals but they care more about some sort of a research ability and a project, as if you are a consultant. So the taking some tasks and trying to do some research with the data, do some analysis, and then create a report for some customers. So that experience is reflected in Capstone. And so if you are interested in that kind of a direction, yes, take a Capstone instead of a internship. Of course, some of the students in the end, take Capstone as an alternative to internship.
got it. Yeah, and I think that's really good guidance, right? Which is the internship is like a gold star on your resume, as far as I'm concerned, right? So looking for that internship opportunity, I think is definitely preferable. So, all right. Other than the internship, if you are a DSBA student, there is what we sometimes call the research option, which is it's a 2 semester commitment where you're working with a specific professor at UNC Charlotte. And this is generally intended for people who are kind of like on the PhD track, right? They're getting their master's and they want to become, deeply embedded into some study, right? That we're doing here with one of our professors. So again, it's a 2 semester commitment. The DSBA 6991 is not for everybody, but it is another option that you have to complete your DSBA program. And then lastly, I think we're working on a practicum where we will have cooperation and partnerships with industry. Stay tuned for more information, I think is our proposition here. But other than that, I feel like we've covered a lot. So I want to see if Josh Hertel wants to add anything that maybe I've forgotten or left out, but I'm definitely open to taking questions as well.
Last piece for me is you all should have gotten an email from me Monday or Tuesday of this week for the resume book. We do get requests every now and then for candidates for internships and full-time positions. If you are interested in being considered for that for spring, um, fill out the information, upload your resume, and we'll continue to share that throughout the semester. That'll also show up again in the next newsletter, Monday or Tuesday of next week. That's coming out next week. Rasad, do you want to add anything though in about the thesis, the research option?
Uh, just like Rong, I would like to emphasize the importance of the uh, internships. However, if you have a um, master thesis option as a pathway toward the PhD, you need to select the faculty carefully you will work with, define the topic appropriately, and make sure that you gain some knowledge regarding the research element or aspect of data science. What I would just like to mention is you really have to take your program seriously. The best pathway to internship is your projects, things that you have done and you can demonstrate and you can show to the potential to companies that might want to take you as an intern and possibly hire you later on. You need to learn more about the company itself. You need to understand what it does and what its values are. But more than anything, you have to understand in analysis, when we talk about analytics, it is not just to apply methods. And you say, well, I've applied these methods and here are the results. No, you have to solve a problem. You have to understand what's in the data. You have to understand what data you have to collect. And until and unless you figure out that this is really something that a doctor does on a daily basis, where you try to figure out what is wrong with a patient, or crime scene investigation to understand who did it, you have to be able to find the wisdom in the data and then be able to tell the story. And
Yeah.
when you do the research, it is a very similar thing. So if you take this program as learning this set of tools, that's one thing. But if you really want to succeed in data science as a career, figure out how you use it to improve some element of the company's performance or any system's performance. That's it.
Yeah, I would back that up for sure. And hopefully this is something where your mentor can kind of guide you a little bit, right? And help you. You may be coming into an organization or a domain which is foreign to you. And so ideally your mentor is that person that can kind of help you bridge that gap. But I think Mirsad said it great, which is this is one of those two pillars I was talking about, right? Good data science work, and then demonstrate that you understand how the data science work has a true meaningful impact to that organization. Whether it's revenue gained, cost saved, increased productivity, better patient outcomes, what that benefit is doesn't matter, but you need to understand it, right? So I think that was a really good point. All right, we have about 5 minutes. I'm willing to take some questions. Do we have anything in chat that maybe we should look at? Okay, well, I'm going to ask Josh to look at the chat a little bit. I've looked at my notes, and there's one question that comes up very frequently that I'll talk about very quickly, and that is about timing, right? So sometimes your internship timeframe doesn't align perfectly to a semester, right? So let me just make a concrete example. What if I had an internship that starts in November? That's problematic, right? Because it's not enough time for me to complete that internship in the fall semester, right? Between November and December, there's just not enough time to do a full internship. In that case, what we would ask you to do is actually enroll for the spring section of 6400. So even though your internship starts in November and maybe continues into February or March, that would land you at the spring section of 6400. So the general rule or guidance here is that when your internship ends, that's kind of the semester that we want you to enroll in. And so sometimes that means doing your proposal, a lot earlier and starting that conversation with me much earlier than the semester, right? So we want to accommodate for timing, and that is one of the challenges that sometimes comes up. Any other questions that I think that we need to
People,
address?
if you want to come quickly off of mute, if you've got a question, we can do a quick lightning round, and we're not going anywhere. So, I mean, you have our emails, you know where our offices are. We're happy to set up follow-up conversations as needed.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all for making time today. Thank you to the faculty. I appreciate it. Robert, Yaron, Mirsad, thank you very much. To all the students, best of luck, and let us know how we can help. Take advantage of the newsletters and the other resources. I put the link in for the resume folder in the chat. There is an email somewhere in your inbox which has more information. If you can't find it, just let me know and I'll resend it. Thanks. Bye. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you. That was great.
Wonderful.
Todd,
Good.
thank you
Yep.
for the time.
Thank you. Bye.
Y'all can email me if you need to.
Sure.
All right.